Help me welcome Claire Lucas from Jesuit High School.
Good evening. My name is Claire Lucas, and I'm a junior from Jesuit High School in Portland, Oregon. This past summer, I went on an immersion trip with 10 other students from my school to the Mexican-American border with the goal of learning about immigration from those who are present there. Now, this was an immersion trip, which I'm sure that some of you have experienced before. We slept on the ground. We learned that some cockroaches can fly. We ate, or at least tried, strange food. And when you walked outside, it felt like you were walking into an oven. Never did I expect how much this trip would truly change my life. I came home from this trip with many stories, but more importantly, I came home with the realization of social justice issues and what must be done to stop these injustices on the border. Illegal immigration on the border is a very complex issue, but when you see it up close and hear stories about people dying in the desert and people getting deported again and again, it becomes a little less complex. Immigrants are coming to the United States with the hope of making a better lives for their family here. It's as simple as that. Many things affect the situation on the border today, including something called the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. NAFTA was an attempt to increase trade and commerce between North American countries. There were many parts to this agreement. One of them was placing maquilas, or American border factories, on the Mexican side of the border. Now, I could spend the rest of my talk telling you about these maquilas and the role they play on the Mexican economy, but there's something much more pressing that we all must know about, and this is something called Operation Streamline. Operation Streamline is a court proceeding that takes place in federal courthouses every day. In Tucson, Arizona alone, 70 immigrants per day are charged with illegal entry into the United States, convicted and sentenced to time in a federally funded private detention center. The law up until 2006 in this situation was to immediately deport these immigrants back to their native country of origin. But post 9/11, law now allows them to be charged with illegal entry. First-time offenders are most often charged and released. Repeat offenders are sentenced from 30 days up to a year in a private detention center. The few cases that were prosecuted before 2006 were put through the civil justice system, with only the extreme cases going through the criminal system. The significance of this is that cases charged through the civil system are not recorded on criminal records, therefore making it possible for these immigrants to one day obtain legal U.S. citizenship. Now, all immigrants charged in Operation Streamline are charged as criminals, therefore making it impossible for any of them to ever achieve legal citizenship. This entire proceeding is so questionable legally because of the lack of due process that the U.S. Department of Justice does not allow U.S. attorneys to prosecute these cases. They require that the Department of Homeland Security takes care of them. While on my trip this past summer, I witnessed these proceedings. When we walked into the courtroom, we were first given strange looks from the Border Patrol officers as they watched a group of American teenagers enter the room. We all sat down and immediately noticed the smell coming from the left side of the room where 70 immigrants wearing translation headsets sat. These people had been held for up to 3 days before their trial, and remember that oven I talked about earlier? They were not allowed to shower or change their clothes in that time. 6 at a time, we watched each of the 70 get their name called, walk to the center, and stand with one of the attorneys that were sitting around the perimeter of the room. We watched each of them get asked the same questions, all of which they were informed to answer yes in order to accept the plea deal they were told to accept from their attorneys. Then we watched the judge go down the line and inform each of them for how long they will stay in prison. 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, 60 days, depending on the severity of their crime. We watch each of them walk in front of us, hands and feet in shackles, escorted by a Border Patrol agent. As I sat there in that courtroom, watching becoming emptier and emptier with each passing minute, I felt a wide array of emotions. I think the first emotion that I felt was confusion. How is my country doing this? Where are these people going? How come no one knows about this? All of these were questions that I asked myself. I felt angry because I'm part of this country. My parents pay taxes to a government that holds these people unfairly. As I sat there, and one by one, people walked by us and looked us in the eye as they turned the corner and their lives began to change. All that I could give these people in this moment were gentle eyes and a small smile that tried to tell them that I care about you. But these small actions cannot communicate such a powerful message, because I realized that after I left that room, I would go home and my life would go back to normal. When I was back at home and my life was normal again, they would not be home and their lives would not be normal. I felt conflicted because I was sitting in this huge oak courtroom with flat screen TVs, yet I saw people whose skin was scarred and scratched from the desert and whose clothes were torn and filthy. It all didn't make any sense. Currently, there are not enough federal prisons on the border to hold the thousands of illegal immigrants that are prosecuted through this program each and every year. So the government has started to take out contracts with owners of private prisons. Each year, thousands of immigrants become pieces of this contract. When you lose hope, fear wins. As I sat in that courtroom, I lost all hope. I lost hope for these people who now don't have the ability to ever become a legal U.S. citizen. I became afraid because I had no idea what would happen to them after they left my sight. I lost hope because I felt helpless and I didn't know what I could do to stop this. Now I am here, speaking to you. You give me hope. I have hope that if I can tell my story to all of you, and just a few of you bring witness to these Operation Streamline victims, then me speaking up here to you is a success, and justice for Streamline victims is within our reach. The immigration reform bill is currently stalled in the House of Representatives. One of the shocking and frustrating things that I learned is that this bill passed by the Senate triples the amount of money given to Streamline every year. The biggest lobbyist for this increase, the private prison industry in border states. Every time I hear about another decision made in Washington, D.C. about immigration, I think to myself, have they seen the border? Have they seen what it's like, and have they watched the proceedings? Have they sat in that courtroom? And I encourage you to ask those same questions. On Monday, I ask that you bring my witness to your congressional visits. Ask that they reconsider the funding for Operation Streamline. In the Senate, this would have to happen in conference committee, and in the House, there is still time. Thank you, and blessings on your time here in DC.